Hello, hope you're doing well. Welcome to another installment of Disney and Dragons, where I take well-known characters from Disney movies and reimagine them as different Dungeons & Dragons classes. If you didn't see the last one of these that I made, I'll put a link to it in the corner now and at the end of the video if you want to check it out. That video did a lot better than I ever thought it would. It certainly seemed to go over pretty well with you guys anyway. I had a ton of comments coming in from people who were saying that they wanted to see more Disney heroes given the D&D treatment, so I kinda had to make another one of these. Before we get started though, I have some exciting news that I want to share with you guys real quick. First of all, I'm making the designs from my first Disney & Dragons video, as well as this one, the designs that you're about to see, available as prints over on my Redbubble page. I was kinda up in the air about making them into prints before now, since Redbubble can be pretty strict about fan art, even though half the stuff on their site is fan art. But I figured, hey, so many of you guys have asked about it, I may as well chuck it up there for a bit, so that at least some of you guys who really wanted to get prints of these designs will have the chance to. So yeah, I don't know how long they'll stay up there. I'll try and keep you guys posted in the comments if they get taken down or if I change the print site I'm using or anything. But at the time of uploading this video, all of my Disney & Dragons character designs are available as prints. So I'm going to keep links for those updated in the video description if you want to check those out. Second, final, and most exciting announcement, maybe the most surreal as well, for me anyway, is that today's video is brought to you by my first ever sponsor, Amino. If you haven't heard of Amino before, it's basically a community-run app where you can join different communities based on your interests and then share content with other people who enjoy your favourite things just as much as you do. And with their new story feature, there are even more ways to share the things you enjoy. Amino Stories are a new way of sharing your content through short, vertical videos uploaded directly into the app itself. They could be anything from mini speed paints to AMVs, or if you're a YouTube creator like me, maybe even a bit of behind-the-scenes content to go along with the videos on your channel. I've actually made a story to go along with today's speed paint showing some of the behind-the-scenes concept sketches that went into today's designs. I might be making some more behind-the-scenes Amino stories in the future as well, so if you want to take a look at all of that extra content, make sure to check out the links in the description. Anyway, big thanks to Amino for sponsoring this video, that was real cool of you, I appreciate it. And big thanks to you guys watching this video for sitting through all of these introductory bits. I think you've been waiting long enough though, so without further ado, let's draw some stuff. So first up for today's party of heroes is Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Actually, I feel like I should preface here by saying that I didn't intend for the characters I drew last time to really be interpreted as one party of heroes or one team, but that's what happened, apparently, if the comment section is anything to go by, anyway. So yeah, I don't know if the characters I'm going to be drawing today are all one party either, or if they all, mingle with the guys from last time. I don't know. You guys can interpret it however you want, whichever way is the most fun. Anyway, another common thing that I saw in the comments from last time was people saying things like, oh hey, that character sings, why didn't you make them a bard? And the simple answer for that is that this is Disney, and everybody sings. For the most part anyway. If I were going by the rule of if they got bars then they're a bard, then these designs would get real repetitive real quick. Ariel, on the other hand, is a character that I actually did think would fit the role of a bard pretty well. The reason being that in D&D, bards draw their power from song, and one of the key plot points in Ariel's story is centered very specifically around her voice and her singing. And then, of course, losing her voice and her ability to sing. I feel like if you were playing her as a character, then that would be a pretty cool plot point to either have as a part of her backstory, or use to drive her story forward throughout a campaign. I also thought that the natural curiosity and fascination she has with things she doesn't understand fit pretty well with the Lore Bard subclass specifically, since they also tend to have a strong desire to learn and experience new things in their adventures. For Ariel's redesign, I was a little torn between drawing her fully as a human or fully as a mermaid. Her mermaid appearance is definitely more iconic, and was definitely the look I wanted to rework, but it's kinda hard to go adventuring with a land-based party when you have gills. And then I remembered that there's a species in D&D called Tritons, which, appropriately enough, is also her dad's name, if I'm remembering correctly. Tritons are a kind of half-man, half-fish folk species that live under the sea. If you do a quick Google image search of them, a lot of the time they're depicted with that kind of green, scaly, creature from the Black Lagoon kind of vibe. They're pretty cool. Since I wanted to keep Ariel's skin tone the same as in her original design so as to avoid throwing her color palette out of whack, The main Triton-like features I ended up giving her were a pair of fish-like fins where her ears would be, and webbed fingers. She ended up as kind of a half Triton, maybe? Her outfit in particular was really fun to design. Like I said, I wanted to draw from her classic mermaid aesthetic. Bright red hair, purple clamshell bikini kind of thing? I don't really know. And of course, a green mermaid tail. In my experience, bards aren't really frontline fighters, and since it seems appropriate for a bard to be dressed more for a performance than for the battlefield anyway, it seemed fitting to give her a design focused a bit more on fashion than on function. Just this once. For this outfit though, I didn't want to go quite as skimpy as the whole clamshell bikini thing, because that would be really, really impractical. So I changed it into a crop top in that same purple colour with sleeves to match, and added some partially armoured elements inspired by the outfit that Nora wears in the anime Ruby. To mimic the mermaid tail, I gave her leggings and these sort of tall, potentially armoured leg coverings in varying shades of green, as well as a sort of decorative coat-tail style feature that mimics the fins on the tail of her original design. You know, along with the boots and the waistcoat-like armour, the tail on the leggings kind of ended up giving the look a vibe that reminded me of those old-fashioned tap dancing outfits with the coattails and the spats. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, it's cute, it's a look, it works. So since the group of characters I drew last time ended up being pretty magic heavy, I wanted to change things up this time around and draw some heroes that excelled, for the most part, more at their physical skills. So next up is Mulan as a fighter. I had both of the Mulan movies on VHS tapes when I was a kid, and I watched them more times than I can count. I think I had a computer game as well that I also played probably way too much. Needless to say, Mulan was my favourite Disney princess growing up, and probably still is to this day if I'm being honest, so it was a real treat to be able to draw her for this video. Her design ended up being the trickiest of this set to settle on though, since she wears so many outfits in her movie, and I couldn't fully decide which one was the most iconic. Between the multiple dresses and sets of armour she's seen in throughout the film, I had a tough time choosing which one to use as my main source of inspiration. Initially, I drew a concept sketch based on her green and yellow dress, since that's the one I saw most often when I was looking for some typical Disney princess promotional material to use as a reference image. In the end though, I changed that idea up and based the colour palette I used and the actual design of the armour that I drew more on the outfit she wears while in the military, with black armour, a green shirt and brown leggings. I still wanted to include an element that would combine it with the style of her other movie outfits though, so I also drew a sash around her waist similar to the one on the dress she wears at the end of the movie. For her weapon, I gave her the dragon sword from her movie and tried to draw it as accurately as I could. It's quite detailed. I also gave her a cape with a fancy trim to make her look more like a high-ranking military general might do in this kind of fantasy setting. And of course, I couldn't draw Mulan and leave out Mushu. I will admit I'm not really well versed in drawing more cartoony or the almost anthropomorphized kind of features that animals tend to have in Disney movies, so he got a bit of a restyle as well. I also figured that he would fit in a bit better with the whole RPG aesthetic if he looked a bit more mysterious. Ended up looking like a little pseudo-dragon companion up there on her shoulder. What a good lad. I chose to draw Mulan as a fighter because typically it's the class most suited for knights and military warrior type characters. In fact, there's a subclass of the fighter class literally called Knight. I thought that would be a good fit for Mulan since she's a part of the military and all, and knights generally fight for the sake of a king or an emperor. But in the end, I couldn't decide whether the knight or the samurai subclass would be better suited for Mulan specifically. Obviously, I know Mulan is a Chinese warrior and samurai are Japanese, but, you know, Dungeons & Dragons isn't set in the real world, so like, a subclass could be called anything, since the name doesn't really have any bearing on what a character's like. It's more a matter of what kind of skills and abilities the class gives the character specifically. Unfortunately, I don't know everything about every subclass in the game because I don't have that much storage space in my brain. I'm not Matt Mercer, so I still don't really know which would be a better fit. As such, I think I'll leave the knight or samurai or other debate open-ended, and if any of you guys want to talk about it in the comments, please go right ahead, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Next up on the roster is another of my favourite princesses, Merida from Brave. I remember the first time I watched Brave was on Mother's Day with my mum, and we're both saps, so if any of you have seen the movie yourselves, I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that it made us both cry. Now, Merida, of course, had to be a ranger. Like, come on, was there ever going to be any debate about that? Actually, I think there were some comments on the last Disney and Dragons video suggesting that Merida should be a druid because of all the bears and will-o-wisps and stuff. And you know what? That's actually pretty interesting. That's a fun take. It's always fun to play around with different ideas and concepts and stuff. But also, if you thought that the girl who split an arrow in half by shooting another arrow at it was going to be anything other than the class that specializes in archery and long-ranged weapons, then I don't know what to tell you, man. You're not correct on that one. Anyway, Merida's design was pretty easy to put together. Certainly compared to the last two designs at least, since she only really had the one iconic outfit that I could work from. I pulled up a reference picture and started by drawing the elements that I wanted to keep the same from her original design. The bow slung over her shoulder, the quiver of arrows on a belt at her hip, and of course, her hairstyle. Drawing such a big, wild hairstyle was probably one of the most fun parts to work on in this design. After drawing those elements in, I started on the rest of her outfit. I opted to trade out the long skirt on her original dress for a more practical set of trousers and boots. I also found some promotional art of her dress that featured a cool Celtic pattern going around the bottom of her skirt, so I gave her a cape with that design on the bottom as well as a fur collar to match the fur trim on her boots. I figured it'd be cool to add some fur elements like that to her costume since bears play such a large part in her story. For the main part of her outfit, I gave her a tabard, or tunic, I don't think I actually know the real term for what it is that I ended up drawing here, but, a medieval style getup, in the same colour as her dress, and added arm guards on her forearms to echo the long sleeves on her original costume. During the sketching stage of this design, I also played around with the idea of giving Merida some of that Braveheart-style blue war paint that some of the characters in Brave have on their faces and bodies. But once I finished colouring her, I realised that she looked fine without it, and adding war paint would probably have just made her design look a bit too busy, so I ended up leaving it out. And last but certainly not least, we have Tarzan. Don't want to leave the guys out after all. Now, I haven't seen any of the movies I've been drawing here in quite a fair while, but it's been an especially long time since I last watched Tarzan. About midway through working on this drawing, I actually started wondering why I'd even chosen to work on a redesign for Tarzan in the first place, since I couldn't remember pretty much anything about his movie. And then I put on some of the songs from the Tarzan soundtrack for inspiration, and I realized that it was probably mostly just an excuse to listen to some of that music again. Seriously, Phil Collins, man. There were a lot of suggestions on the last video from people who wanted to see Tarzan as a barbarian, and rightly so. He's quite literally a wild man, so I can't really think of any other Disney hero that would be better suited for the class. Getting into the specifics, I figured for this redesign that a totem barbarian in particular would be a pretty cool path to go down, since totem barbarians draw their strength from animal spirits. And you know, as far as my fuzzy memory will recall, I'm pretty sure animals play a pretty big part in Tarzan's story. Now, like I said earlier, I don't know every detail about every D&D character class, so I'm not sure whether totem barbarians are supposed to have just the one type of animal totem that they can draw power from, or if they, collect a bunch as they go and then they can pick and choose depending on the situation. So I figured better safe than sorry, and drew a couple of different totems hanging from his belt, like a bird's feather and some tiny statues carved to represent different creatures. So Tarzan's redesign was kind of a weird one to do as far as the outfit was concerned, because his original costume is literally just a loincloth. Obviously I wanted to stay true to that design so that he'd look recognisable by the end of it, but I also needed to add a fair few elements to really push that barbarian aesthetic. Now, thankfully proper clothing doesn't really hold as much value in a barbarian's arsenal as much as armour and weapons do, so, using Grog from Critical Role as inspiration, I gave him some belts, cloth wraps, and a fur-lined pauldron on one shoulder. I wasn't really sure what weapon to give him since I couldn't remember if he used weapons in his movie at all, but thankfully I found a few screenshots of him using a spear while I was looking for reference images, so I gave him a spear in my redesign as well. One thing I did remember from Tarzan's movie was that he would use his feet to surf around on vines and tree roots and stuff to get around, so I decided against giving him any proper footwear since it might get in the way if he decided to go sliding around. While I was looking for reference pictures, I also found one screenshot of Tarzan with some, claw marks on his chest. Obviously I'm assuming that they're only there for a scene or two in the movie itself, but it ended up inspiring me to bring back the war paint idea that I had first intended to use on Merida's design, and chuck a few splashes of barbarian-style war paint onto Tarzan. I had fun working on all of these designs, but Tarzan's really made for an interesting change of pace after working on all the princesses. Partially because it's always fun to draw half-naked men, but also mostly because he's just so angular by comparison. Seriously, this man has the sharpest face I think I've ever seen on a Disney hero. His palette was also way simpler to put together since it pretty much only consisted of the colour brown. Real nice one to finish on all round, I'd say. And that's another batch of heroes completed. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and do remember to check out the links in the description for prints of these and all my other Disney and Dragons designs, as well as the behind the scenes footage over on Amino. I've got another Disney and Dragons video on the way soon that's going to be a little bit different. I'm quite excited to get that one out to you guys, so I hope you'll look forward to it too. But in the meantime, thank you very much for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you next time.